Welcome to this explainer. If you've ever found yourself tumbling down a late-night rabbit hole on a French history forum, you've probably encountered some pretty wild claims. You know the ones that World War II-era Germany was somehow sitting on technology that was decades, if not centuries, ahead of its time. Well, today, we are going to methodically break down these pervasive legends, and we're going to separate the actual historical facts from pure science fiction.
So let's just dive right into the core of this mystery that has absolutely captivated the internet for decades. Did the Third Reich actually possess things like time machines, anti-gravity bells, and secret moon bases? I mean, it's a really fascinating question, primarily because of just how widely believed some of these theories still are today. So we're going to examine the evidence, or as you'll see, the total lack of it, to understand exactly where these sci-fi concepts came from.
To get to the truth, here is our roadmap for today. First, the Nazi tech myth. Second, the Legend of Die Glocke. Third, Antarctica and moon bases. Fourth, the men behind the myths. And finally, number 5, real science versus pseudoscience. Let's get going.
Starting off with part 1, the Nazi tech myth.
Now, the crucial thing to understand right out of the gate is this concept of the Wunderwaffe, which is German for wonder weapon. Yes, it's totally true that the Nazis developed advanced tech for the time, like V-2 rockets and the first jet fighters. But the idea of a physics-defying wonder weapon, honestly, that was largely just desperate propaganda. It was a psychological tool designed to keep the German public hopeful when they were losing. The reality is, while their engineering was definitely advanced for the 1940s, they definitely weren't bending the laws of space and time.
And this comparison here brilliantly highlights that massive gap between the exciting science fiction we invent in our heads and the dark, grounded reality of German engineering during the war. Because while the internet loves a good trope about time travel and flying saucers, the grim historical record shows something else entirely. It shows conventional, albeit innovative, rocketry and aircraft built almost entirely on the backs of brutal, forced labor.
Moving right along to part 2, the Legend of Die Glocke. Just look at the sheer level of hyper-specific detail attached to a device that almost certainly never existed. According to the lore, which was really popularized by a Polish journalist named Igor Witkowski and a British author named Nick Cook, this device, known as the Bell, was this massive radiation-emitting machine. It was allegedly housed in a secret facility called Doris, and it supposedly used a mysterious violet liquid metal called Xerum 525 to power counter-rotating cylinders. And what did it do? Well, supposedly it created anti-gravity or even time-warping effects. You can really see how this timeline builds a super compelling, almost movie-like narrative. I mean, tracking the highly classified transport of this top-secret device across Europe as the Allies closed in. According to the legend, it was moved from a hospital basement in Berlin all the way to a secret mine near the Czech border. It is literally the perfect blueprint for a thrilling spy movie, which, let's be real, is exactly why the story has stuck around for so long. But here is where the whole myth hits a massive brick wall. Conspiracy theorists look at this concrete ring, which they dramatically call the henge, and they claim it was a test rig to tether the anti-gravity bell so it wouldn't, shoot off into space. The reality? It's literally just the remaining base of a perfectly ordinary, completely boring industrial water cooling tower. It is honestly amazing how easily basic plumbing gets romanticized into a sci-fi launchpad when you really want to believe a story.
Which brings us to part 3, Antarctica and moon bases.
82. That is the total number of men on the 1939 MS Schwabenland expedition to Antarctica. Seriously, just 82 scientists and military personnel. They went down on a converted catapult ship to basically scout some territory and stake a claim. But within about a month, they packed up their things and headed straight back to Germany. Yet somehow, from that one very brief 82-man scouting trip, an entire mythology was born. The myth suggests they secretly built this sprawling, technologically advanced hidden fortress under the ice. And despite the fact that literally thousands of modern scientists have visited Antarctica over the last 80 years without a single incident, theorists still incredibly claim that advanced cloaking tech is hiding a massive frozen fortress that, quite simply, never existed.
Oh, and it gets even wilder. Some of these theories literally stretch all the way to the moon, claiming that in 1942, Nazi scientists used rocket saucers to establish lunar bases. These claims are unnervingly persistent, but they actually stem from an uncomfortable historical reality. Former Nazi personnel like Wernher von Braun really were central to the legitimate U.S. Apollo moon landings decades later. So what happened?
People simply took that real historical connection and projected it backward into pure fantasy.
All right, let's move on to part 4, the men behind the myths.
It's absolutely vital to note that the entire foundation of the Die Glocke story rests on completely unverified, third-hand anecdotes. Remember Igor Witkowski? He claimed that some unnamed Polish intelligence contact let him read, but not copy, of course, classified interrogation transcripts of an SS general. Guys, there is no historical record, no academic proof, and absolutely zero corroborating evidence that these transcripts ever existed outside of Witkowski's own head. And then there's SS General Hans Kammler, the guy so often cited as the diabolical scientific mastermind running the Bell Project. But just look at this quote from Albert Speer. This historical assessment perfectly shatters that whole evil genius myth. It reveals Kammler for what he actually was, an architect and a brutal SS bureaucrat. He wasn't some visionary physicist designing anti-gravity engines. He was a ruthless administrator managing projects in forced labor.
Finally, let's dig into part 5, real science versus pseudoscience.
So, if a large bell-shaped device actually did exist near a power plant and a mine, what on earth was it? Well, experts actually have some highly plausible theories for this. It could have been an SS uranium enrichment device, or honestly, even more practically, it might have just been a massive mercury arc rectifier used to convert AC to DC power. Even Nick Cook, the guy who helped popularize the myth, later admitted that if the bell existed, it was likely just a mundane piece of industrial equipment for powering underground machinery.
Now, let's take a quick look at the actual physics that conspiracy theorists claim made the bell fly. It's a basic physics lesson, really. Spinning a heavy liquid in a circle simply pushes it outward due to centrifugal force. It creates inertia against the walls of the container. It absolutely does not magically create a net upward thrust, and it sure doesn't cancel out gravity. I mean, you can't just spin mercury fast enough to make it float away. It's exactly like how turning on your kitchen blender doesn't make it launch into your ceiling, right?
But here's the crazy part. The idea of using mercury for propulsion didn't just pop out of thin air. The myth actually borrowed heavily from reality. Back in the 1960s, NASA legitimately experimented with using liquid mercury in early ion drives for satellites. They used electromagnetic fields to manipulate the conductive fluid. It was incredibly cutting-edge plasma engineering. But they abandoned it because the toxic exhaust would have totally poisoned the upper atmosphere. So the mythmakers just took this real science, twisted it backward in time, and slapped it onto a magical flying saucer. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Why is the myth so much more appealing to us than the truth? Maybe our endless fascination with these stories is just a testament to how tough it is to distinguish between the bleeding edge of physics and pure fantasy. The reality of World War II engineering was marked by some incredible leaps, for sure. But it was also deeply, inextricably tied to the grim reality of forced labor and brutal bureaucracy. And let's face it, that reality is a lot less fun to talk about than time-traveling flying saucers. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and whatever you do, keep asking the tough questions.